Hi there. So this is going to be our lecture on our evolution part 1. This is going to be evidence of evolution. So you should have already made a copy of the Evolution 1 student presentation. It's on the calendar or in evolution and biodiversity, the content module. So go find it and make a copy. And the things that I have highlighted, you should highlight. Let me just start by saying that there are other slides. I've included slides 1 through 9, and those are about Lamarck and Darwin. Those are things that we have already discussed in class, and so I've included them, and just make sure that you go through them. It also has your test date of February 10th on one of the slides so that you know that that is coming. So today we are going to focus on some key concepts about what evolution is and what natural selection is, and do a little mini introduction, and then really start to talk about evidence of evolution. And so we've talked about Darwin's observations and his travels and how they helped him sort of form his ideas about the theory of evolution. So the takeaway point is that we've talked about this. Evolution is simply change over time in a really long period of time. Things are always changing, and they probably always will. And he also had this principle of common descent. Remember, descent is where you come from. And he is saying that all species, living and extinct, were derived or came from common ancestors. And if you go back far enough, you'll find that one common ancestor for everything that has lived, will live, and has gone extinct. So we're going to get started with a little bit of an introduction. We already know about what evolution is. Evolution is kind of a noun. It is that change over time. But how does it occur? The process, the verb, is going to be natural selection. So we will be talking about how that process really happens. And then just a reminder that when we talk about a theory, we're talking about a scientific theory. So we're talking about observations and data and evidence. So these two slides, this one and the next one, sort of go together. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to pause here and read through this slide. And when you're done reading this slide, go to the next slide. And I'm going to sort of talk through the process with the picture. So we've talked a lot about genes and alleles. So we need to talk about a gene pool and how does change occur. So remember, genes have different forms called alleles. In this frog example, the gene is for skin color. And this is just a reminder of what chromosomes and alleles look like. I'm not saying that the frogs have freckles. All right, so we're going to use the frog example. The gene is for skin color, and then you have alleles, the different forms of genes that code for the different colors, the green, the purple, and the red in this case. So a gene pool are all of the genes that are available in a population. So, for example, you are pretending that this is just a model. We are pulling out all the different alleles for all of these different frogs. That makes up the gene pool. And gene flow and changes in gene frequency, how often you see or have those genes, happen when frogs, reproducing frogs, either enter a system, say there are two ponds that are separated by a thin strip of land, and that it have a really high storm season, and it becomes one big pond. So now the frogs that were in both of the ponds are in one big pond, and they're able to all reproduce. So all of that new gene information from the frogs of both ponds are going to now make up one population, one big gene pool. On the other side, let's say that a hawk can see the purple frogs really easily, and it eats up all the purple frogs. So now those purple frogs are no longer available to reproduce, and the genes that they carry for that purple color are going to decrease in frequency in the gene pool. and eventually maybe there won't be any purple frogs. So how those genes enter and leave a system and are available for reproduction, and then you see it in the frog that's produced, that's gene flow of the gene pool. We'll talk more about this and we'll do some practice, but we just want to keep it pretty simple. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to stop here and watch the short video. It's called Gene Flow Intro. The link is live in this lecture for you on your notes. And also you can find the video on the calendar or under Evolution and Biodiversity Content module. Come back when you are done watching the videos. Focus on how genes come and go out of a system. Come back when you're done. All right, so we are going to get into our pieces of evidence. So again, we are looking for observations and data and evidence that help us prove that evolution, change over time, is occurring. Okay, so the first type of evidence that we are going to look at is called biochemistry. And we've already talked about protein synthesis last semester. So we know about how you get these chains of amino acids that make up a protein. So if you look at the proteins, which remember are tied to your genetic code, if you look at proteins and you find the number of amino acids in a sequence, a protein sequence, that two different species have in common, the more sequences that they have in common, the more closely related they are. So in this example, it says, what's more closely related? And then you have a list of species, and you will have an example like this on your test. And then you have the sequence. And as you can see very clearly, the human and the chimpanzee have all four of this particular sequence in common. Now, are humans chimpanzees? No. Remember, the body makes a whole bunch of different proteins, okay? So clearly, we are not chimpanzees, but we are more closely related to chimpanzees, meaning if you go back in time, you will find our common ancestor between humans and chimpanzees sooner than you would say between a human and a horse. Okay? So the more sequences they have in common, the more closely related the two species are. Tied with that is genetics. If you are given the amount of the genome, all of the DNA that makes you you, so all 23 of your chromosomes, say, and then you can compare it to the genome of another species, and you can look at the percentage that you have in common. The higher the percentage, the more closely related. The lower the percentage, the least closely related, meaning you would have to go back further in time to find that common ancestor. So, according to this table, humans are most closely related to chimpanzee because if you compare our entire genome, all 23 of our chromosomes, our pairs, to the chromosomes of a chimpanzee, 99.5% of our genomes are in common with a chimpanzee. So we only have about 0.5 of a difference in our entire DNA makeup that makes us human and makes chimps chimps. And then take this is a little bit disconcerting to me. We still have 60% of our genome in common with a fruit fly. Something to think about. So really, even though you have to go back a lot farther to find that common ancestor, still 60% of our DNA. That says something. All right, next up, embryology. And this is going to be really important. Make sure that you have a handle on this because tomorrow we are going to do a simulated lab and it has to do with embryo development. So over here in the picture, you have a fish, a salamander, which is like a little invertebrate. Not invertebrate, it's a vertebrate. It kind of looks like a slimy, tadpole-ish looking frog thing. A tortoise, which is a land turtle. A chicken. A hog, which is a pig. A calf, which is a cow. A rabbit, and a human. Okay? So when you look at embryology, all of these have a backbone. But look at this. The same groups of embryonic cells develop in the same order and in the same patterns to produce the tissues and organs of all vertebrates. So as you can see in this early stage, we all had a tail and we all had gills, okay? Obviously, most of us no longer have a tail or gills. We have lungs, and our tail is just left over and is a little nub inside, and you can't see it. But look how far you have to get before you can actually tell what's what, okay? And so at the beginning stages, we all kind of look the same. And the things that become, let's say, like the fins of a fish are the limb buds, or become the arms and the legs, say, of a human. Interesting. All right. So along with these patterns, the same order and the same patterns to develop similar tissues and organs, goes with morphology. And we're going to look at three things with morphology. We are going to start with homologous body structures. So remember that HOMO as a prefix means the same. Okay. So what's the same here? Let's look at the example of a human arm, a cat leg, a whale flipper, and a bat wing. Okay. Obviously, when they're covered up, okay, and you're just looking at them, they don't look the same. They don't do the same thing, right? Humans don't fly, okay? Whales don't fly, and the function is different. Human arms are for balance. A whale flipper is used as a rudder to steer. A bat wing is used to fly. But if you look internally, the bone structure is the same. Okay, you have basically your upper one arm bone, you have two bones in the forearm, and then we have finger bones. So even though a whale flipper and a bat wing is covered, inside they have the same number and type of arm and finger bones, even wrist bones. Okay, so that's the part that's the same. They develop in the same order from the same embryonic tissues to have those same basic bone structures, which tells us that they share a common ancestor. Now we're going to compare this with analogous body structures. AN as a prefix means the opposite or different. So you have similar body structures. We have a moth wing, we have a pterodactyl wing, a dinosaur, we have a bird wing, and we have the bat wing. So in analogous body structures, they serve the same function: flight, 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 and flight. But they have different embryonic tissues, and they have therefore different ancestors. A moth is an insect. It has no bones. Okay. A bat is a mammal. It has bones. All right. And if you look at the pterodactyl, it has sort of like a membrane here. A bird has feathers. It's clearly not made out of the same materials or even in the same order. Okay, so same function, flight, but different tissues, different ancestors, analogous, different. The last morphology slide is about vestigial, that's how you say that, structures and organs. So these are structures that way back in the past might have had a function, but no longer serve a function. And in a lot of cases, they've shriveled or shrunk, and they're just kind of there, but serve no purpose. So for example, in a whale has hip bones and some leg bones, but they're super tiny and they're internal. Why? because whales no longer walk on the planet. They're all in the ocean. Likewise, humans have all sorts of extra stuff that we don't need. This coccyx, this is our tailbone, okay? So it's inside, we don't have a tail. Many of you might have gotten your wisdom teeth out or your appendix or your tonsils out. All of that stuff is extra, serves no purpose. Vestigial structures. All right, last but not least, the fossil record. This is an easy one. All right, so basically if you compare fossils, you can see how the planet has changed over time, and you can even look at the same sort of species, how they have changed over time. There are sloths today. Sloths are kind of the size of a small dog, but the giant extinct sloth was the size of like a rhinoceros. Okay, so quite big. And just because there's gaps in the fossil record doesn't mean that species didn't exist. Frankly, fossils are really rare and really hard to come across. And the planet is changing, and there are fossils that are going to be destroyed or buried or never got made just because the circumstances weren't correct. So the last thing that you need to do, and you do need to do this, is if you go to the Evidence of Evolution video, it's also on the calendar, or in the Evolution and Biodiversity content module. This one's about 11 minutes long. It's a lot longer, but you need to watch it. And you need to pause it and make sure that you understand it. And then when you are done, use these notes and the video clips and take the graded Evidence of Evolution quiz. This quiz will be available for retake, so you can take it more than once. Get that free 100 up until Wednesday, January 27th at 7 a.m. And that is it. See you tomorrow.